What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 98 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. How you doing?
I'm all right. You?
I'm doing pretty good, Steve. And we've got quite an episode this week, and we're gonna start by talking about something that I know you and I are both very passionate about, right? I think if there's one thing that we've talked about wanting to see NSO bring to the table, it's GameCube games, right? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it seems like Nintendo is pretty content to just sell us GameCube games a la carte, right? And in that investor Q&A that we were talking about all last week, we got a little bit of mention about GameCube games on Switch, and I want to pick your brain a little bit here. So, CEO Shuntaro Furukawa was responding to a question about NSO Online, right? And the apps that we have based on legacy systems. And he was dodging a question about the idea of 3DS games coming to an NSO app of some kind. But
Do you
then
think that means they're coming then? The 3DS is coming if he's dodging the question?
I don't know, right? Because I would say no. I don't
That
think that
seems that seems way too close, especially considering a lot of the games that run 3DS were also on the Wii U. It was during
right.
that period of time when they were trying to have like parity across the system. So we got like Mario Maker on there, we got Smash Brothers on there. I don't see 3DS games coming over, but
No,
maybe other 3DS ports. Like I could see like a Pilot Wings game
like, we're
coming
getting
over.
Luigi's Mansion 2, right? Like, I think if
Mm.
anything, the 3DS stuff will be handled more like the GameCube stuff, where, like, it is they just bring games over where they can and, give us and they've done that a couple times, right? Like, we've had a few 3DS games that have made the jump in one way or another.
The
Um,
one thing I really wish they would do, not 3DS, and we'll get onto GameCube in a second. Sorry, I realize I'm taking us off the
you're
rails
derailing
already.
my whole thing, but that's fine. That's what we're
Is
here to do.
is Game& and Watch. Like, it feels like that makes so much sense. Like, it's gotta be like an anniversary for Game& and Watch coming up. Isn't that next year?
I think it's the same thing though, right? Like I think some of this stuff, like they've just found other ways to monetize it. Like they've been selling us Game and Watches. I think they'll probably just keep selling us Game and Watches, right?
I don't want that. Like, I want a Game& Watch collection like they used to do, and they used
I
to
know.
pay like, they used to sell you them, and then they were Club Nintendo awards, and, like, I wanna have the collection so I can play them on my Switch.
It would be nice. I mean, I guess you could maybe see that come to the Game Boy Advance NSO because there was like the Game and Watch gallery titles over there. Maybe
That's
they'll
true,
eventually
yeah.
add those to that library. I could see that.
I'd be okay with that. As long as I can play Chef and Concrete Factory, I'm okay. Cement Factory.
Sure. I think Chef is my favorite one too.
Yeah, I love Chef, it's great.
It's funny though, that's the construction one. That's also one of my favorites. I like the firefighting one too, where there's this stuff
The
coming
firefighting
out the
one's
window
just
and you gotta
like a
bounce it.
riff on it's just a riff on Chef. It's called Fire,
Yeah,
but it's just a riff on Chef.
it's fun though.
It is, but I like burning the sausages in Chef, it's great.
But I do think it's funny though with the 3DS thing because it's like I mean we'd have to get DS before that anyway, right?
Not necessarily, but I do think it's strange because, like, when I think of the DS, like, what could come to mind for you? For me, they're games that are unique to the DS and need the dual screen or the touch screen with the pen or the microphone. It's those kind of games. And we've already got Mario 64. Maybe, yeah, bring the remake that you did for so we can play as Yoshi or
The
Luigi or
Wii U
Peach or
version of
whatever.
that, yeah, like, was really good.
But like games that I would want to play, like Hotel Dusk or Another Code. We've already got Brain Training or Brain Age that came over. So I don't really know what else I would want. I mean, the original Resident Evil was great on there. Maybe port. I mean, that game was already over. Like the GameCube remake
Yeah.
for Resident Evil's already on there.
I'm trying to find a list of games to kinda, like, freshen my memory because it's like, like, there are a bunch of games that come to mind, but I think you run into, like, some problems really quickly, right? Because like, some of the first ones that come to mind for me, I'm like, "Okay, the Pokemon titles," but they never come to NSO, so that's already
Yeah, they're not going to come to NSO. Never. You'll be paying for those.
we're off to a bad start there. I mean, there is, like, stuff like The Legend of Zelda: The Phantom Hourglass and, like, the whatever the train track one. I can't Spirit Tracks or whatever.
Oh, I'd like Link Between Worlds as well if they do
That's a
ever do
3DS title, though.
3DS. Yeah, if they
Yeah.
ever do 3DS, I'd like that to come over because I never got a chance to play that.
But then it was like The World Ends With You is one of the games that came to mind, but like that already got a port, right? Like they did a remake on Switch. So like that's already been satisfied. There's Animal Crossing Wild World, but it's also like, do Animal Crossing games come to these? I don't know. I don't know if they
Yeah,
have
but like,
I don't know if they're interested in re-releasing old Animal Crossing games. I don't know if that's
no, I don't think that makes sense. But they seem to be on a roll of re-releasing like a ton of stuff. Like they could continue the Advance Wars stuff, right? We've had Advance Wars 1 and 2. Why don't you bring like Dual Strike over? That would make sense to do that. Like,
one I would say as well, is, but again, it's a third party thing, but the Chrono Trigger DS, the version of Chrono Trigger on DS, everyone says is the best version.
they've haven't they brought Chrono Trigger out?
On Super Nintendo, I don't think so. No.
Oh, is it not there on the
I don't think
Switch
I don't think
NSO?
so.
You're probably right,
There's the
No.
Phoenix Wright stuff, there's Professor Layton, like both of those got started there. There's like the new Super Mario Bros. Stuff, there's the Mario and Luigi stuff.
The Mario and Luigi stuff I could see, but didn't they shut that studio down? Like
Yeah, but
Alpha Dream got shut down. They could port that over and
you
let
could
someone
port
else do it.
old yeah, like if you're just
Do you
putting
see
them on the NSO app, it's like whatever.
yeah. I mean, some of these games are fine. They work fine. Phoenix Wright, all those games came over. That's fine. But stuff like, Kirby, the one with the paintbrush, power paintbrush, which I
Yeah.
think is called Canvas Curse
Canvas
elsewhere.
Curse, right? Yeah, I don't you can't
Um,
really you'd need
you
a
can't do
stylus
that.
with
You,
that.
you know, you need the stylus and the touchscreen's not as responsive.
But anyway, let's take it back to GameCube.
Yeah.
We're getting sidetracked on these DS titles. But
That was a good system, though.
it
Was a
was.
good
They
system.
both were. They both were. I mean, I'd argue there isn't a bad Nintendo system. I think each one has.
Yeah, Virtual Boy's great.
Okay, you got me there. You got me there. But uh, on the GameCube side of it, right? There was a mention of it, right, where Furukawa actually answered the question, and he said among the titles released for Nintendo GameCube, the HD versions of Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2, the digital version, just recently became available on June 22nd for Nintendo Switch. We value your request and opinion on this topic, right? So like it's kind of a brush off, right? Like it's like, oh, there are GameCube games available on Switch, but we appreciate the interest, right? So like to
Yeah,
me,
this is a shut your mouth, like, we're not talking about it.
it
Go away,
feels
we've
like
got GameCube.
I feel like it feels very like we're not gonna get GameCube, right?
No,
Like I
never,
think I
ever.
think
And
I
there
think
was
we
no
gotta
doubt in
just
my
put that
mind.
one to bed.
Yeah. When they started selling these games, when they started selling I thought maybe 3D All-Stars was an exception, but then we got
Right.
Metroid Prime, and then we
And
got
again, that was like a remaster, but it had new so it's like, all right, maybe, right? Like maybe Pikmin 1 and 2 are just ports. They're just ports.
yeah, I know. And I just don't there's no way now. Absolutely no way. I'd like to see them sell Sunshine again, like, bring that back and just,
I'm gonna
just
stop you right there.
continue to
See,
sell the games.
our good friend Chewy Plays Nintendo wrote in and said, since Nintendo seems to be on a trend of bringing GameCube games to Switch, what GameCube game should they bring to Switch next? And before you answer, that doc guy wrote in and he had two suggestions that I thought were pretty good. Carmen Sandiego Secret of the Stolen Drums, obviously, was the first one. No idea what that game is. Couldn't even hazard a guess.
Is it like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and
Yeah.
she's like investigating some stolen
Yeah, I
drums?
guess.
So is it like a Carmen Sandiego turns Nancy Drew and she's like, going around?
I don't know. But, like, my memory of Carmen Sandiego is like yeah, no, this is like an action adventure game, huh? Huh.
That's so weird.
Okay.
She looked great in that like outfit though, doesn't she?
57 on Metacritic. I don't know about this one, Doc. I don't know about this one. But the other game that you recommended is Ribbit King, and I love that game. So shout out to you on that one.
I don't know what Ribbit
It
King
is
is.
ridiculous. It is a game where it's very like Animal Crossing in its character model style, and it's like golf, but instead of a ball, use a frog. and it's like very like Mario Party, like wacky kind of golf. And like when you hit the frog will jump and stuff like that. So there's like an element to of that to actually scoring and and sinking shots. It's a really fun game. I may or may not have allegedly played it on my Steam Deck.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, before we get into the games we want to see, right? The games that we already got so far, we have Pikmin 1 and 2, right? New ones. We've got Metroid Prime Remastered from earlier this year. Bandai Namco put out Tales of Symphonia, which was another like classic third-party game from the GameCube. We've also had Final Fantasy
That's
Crystal.
Katamari Damacy as well, right?
I don't think that was on GameCube. That was a PS2 exclusive, I want to say. I think
Oh,
it
you're probably right.
I don't
It
think
never
it
came out in the UK.
I don't think it came to other platforms until later, but I could be wrong. But they also did do Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, if you recall. That was an early game that got put on the Switch. So we have had a few. There may be others that I'm not
Yeah,
thinking of.
Monkey Ball. Monkey Ball came
Oh
over.
right, Super Monkey Ball. Was it 1 or 2 remastered?
1 and 2, they both got packed in on that pack-in.
There you go.
I can't remember what it was, but yeah, that came over, I'm sure. And I'm sure some of the old Sonic games, right? When they ported over?
I'm not sure about that.
Like, oh no, yeah, it would have been Adventure from the GameCube era. That definitely hasn't made
Yeah,
it over.
I don't think that's there. So we definitely have a couple, right? Like you already called out there is Super Mario Sunshine's available, right? If you happen to already get it. There's some other like kind of more obscure ones. I found a list here actually from Retro Dodo, which is GameCube games on Switch, and there's some like deep cuts here that I didn't realize had come to Switch, like Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger was one that I forgot had been ported. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, right? Resident Evil 4 just got reported. So like you do have some examples um of games that were like big GameCube games, like or like even some of the other like goofy license stuff like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom that got ported, So you do have some of those titles, but based on, the question we've got here from Chewy, like what are the games that you feel like are missing that you would want to
No,
jump back
okay.
into?
Number 1 for me, and I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone, is The Simpsons Hit and Run, because it's
Fantastic
probably the
choice.
game I spent most time on the GameCube. I had such a good time with it. I love The Simpsons Hit and Run, and it would be wonderful to see that game come to Switch. And I'd like actually a remake of it, but I still feel that that counts because I think Simpsons Hit and Run, where I can actually drive around the whole of Springfield and it's not individual different levels, would be so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you there. I think that's a great call. That's a fun third party choice for sure.
There's some good first party choices as well that I do think are missing.
Oh
Everyone
yeah.
talks about F-Zero and how we need a new F-Zero. Why don't you just bring F-Zero GX over and be done with it and have like a remastered version of that? I think that would look fine. Same with Wind Waker. Like everyone wants Wind Waker. It's still not come to Switch. You've got to imagine they're keeping that one in their pocket and for a soft year where they're just like, oh,
Yeah.
we need something. Here, have Wind Waker.
I'm so surprised it hasn't happened yet. Like I really thought it would have happened a while ago by now. It just feels like such a
Yeah, same
slam
deal with
dunk.
Twilight Princess. It's just weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's odd. And like the fact that both of them already exist, like there's already HD versions of both of those games, and it's like why don't you just sell them to us? Like it's hard for me to wrap my head around it. But speaking of first party stuff, like one of the first ones that came to mind for me with this question was, we just got the announcement that Luigi's Mansion 2 New Moon is going to get remastered. I mean, where's the love for Luigi's Mansion 1? I think that would have been a really cool 1 and 2 package because I think the original Luigi's Mansion,
Great launch title for the console as well.
great launch title, but I also think that it's a game that like I don't want to say has not aged well, but I think it's like it doesn't have a lot of content, right? Like it's not a huge deep game. It's a game you can get through pretty quickly, and, as good as it is, I just feel like people would feel kinda burned paying $60 for it, whereas if it was similar to, like, Pikmin 2, where it was or Pikmin 1 and 2 that we just got, where it's like you can buy them both à la carte or you can get them on a set together, I think that would feel a lot better.
They might do it as one of the smaller titles. I think I could maybe see that. But yeah, it's a shame that they haven't. I think they're going to charge separately for it in the same way they've done Pikmin 1 and 2, and
Yeah.
they'll just charge full whack for it and know that people will pay for it anyway. Especially if it's like a quiet period where people are hungry for stuff. Um, I feel like yeah, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door as well. I feel like that would be ready for a port as well at
There's,
some
like,
point.
rumors that we're getting a remake of that. Like, I've been seeing rumblings about that for a bit now. I wonder if maybe it's the time. I mean, maybe not, like, right now because, like, Super Mario RPG is coming out, right? So, like, there's that, but
Wasn't there a rumor that Double Dash was, like, being worked on as well as, like, Mario Kart, where, like, they were exploring the Double Dash mechanic again?
I feel like I remember seeing that, but I don't know if that
Oh,
I
it's
don't
probably
know.
bollocks.
I mean, you don't know though, right? Because it's like sometimes we do get those kinds of rumors and, like, they go like, the 2D Mario thing that, like, I literally bet was fake and then it was real. So it's like, you don't know, right? It could be real.
Yeah. Chibi Robo would be cool as well as a third party. That'd be fun to bring over. I've always wanted to play that game. Never got a chance to. And my boy Wario needs more love. I'm sick of him being trapped in WarioWare. Let's bring Wario World over. Let's do a full
Like,
remake of Wario World and like
is that a
have his
GameCube
own
game?
platform again. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Wario World is.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's like a 3D version of Wario Land. It's quite
Cool.
good, but I'd still
Cool.
like to play Wario World.
I mean, I'm into that. I think well, so I wanna go with a third party or a first party? We'll go with a third party, I guess, since you brought up a third party game. I think Beautiful Joe 1 and 2 would be a nice
Oh, I'm
collection.
surprised they haven't. Is that Sega?
It's Capcom, isn't it?
Oh, Capcom, yeah. I
Yeah.
could see them doing that.
What's up with that? Have we never gotten a have we
No, never
when's
got
the
a
last
re-release. Got
of
trapped
any of them?
on PlayStation and GameCube, yeah.
That's isn't
Do you
that
think it's like a
isn't that
soundtrack
really
issue or
weird?
something?
Yeah, but, like, even if it is, like, pay for the license. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that
Or maybe
really
it's because it's
strange?
like maybe it's due to like the link with Platinum. Because like didn't wasn't Platinum they did the Wonderful 101? Isn't that loosely connected to Beautiful Joe?
I don't I don't think so. I think it's, like, a similar style, but I don't think they're connected. Um, yeah, and I mean, the first game was made by Clover Studio, and it looks like they made Beautiful Joe. Yeah, they made so that studio made Beautiful Joe, Beautiful Joe 2, 2 other sequels that I had not heard of that were, like, I guess, portable, and then they did Okami and God Hand, which I've never heard of, and then that's it.
God Hand sounds like it's right up your street. Isn't that like black and white?
No, it's not, it's a beat 'em up.
Oh, that's a shame.
Emphasis on the hands, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, that's weird to me, right? Like, I'm surprised that they've never done a port of it.
Yeah, that would be nice to see. There's a lot of good games on the GameCube,
Oh,
isn't there?
interesting. You know what? So that team, most of that studio, they went on to form Tango Gameworks. So that's the Hi-Fi Rush, Ghostwire Tokyo,
Oh,
Evil
that makes
Within
a
team.
lot of sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
you
Yeah.
can see that through line with
Yeah.
Hi-Fi Rush because I remember when Hi-Fi Rush came out, everyone was like, "Oh, that's kind of a left turn." Like they've done all horror stuff, and it's like, well, not back in the day.
Yeah,
But
this is
yeah,
actually what they were doing.
Beautiful Joe feels like it's long overdue for some like a remaster, a collection, something like that. I feel like that's like one of those like really classic franchises from that era, and it just doesn't get any love.
You know what is also ready for a remaster or some additional love from that era? And that is Mario Party 4 to 7 that are stuck on the GameCube and
Yeah.
need to be given some love in a new, or I would prefer DLC, but a new Super Mario Party or Mario Party Superstars 2 or whatever they want to call this next one.
Yeah.
Mario
Either
Party
way.
Ultra Stars. It needs to come. They need to happen. You got the N64 ones, and I didn't care about those maps really. I want the good ones from the GameCube era. Bring those for me.
Yeah, I want them to put all of that in Superstars, but I'd be fine with the Superstars too if that's what they need to do, like, financially for it to make sense. Like, that's fine. Because then you just have
Honestly, like, just give me like a can't they make that as part of the once we're done with the Mario Kart DLC, like make that the free thing that you get on your expansion pack and fund it that way and
dude, I would kill for
like
that.
come on.
I would kill for that. You mentioned it earlier, kind of in passing, but like Double Dash is a game I would like to have access to in a re-release. Like, I don't know if that's a thing that they're gonna, if they're like planning on going back to that for Mario Kart 9 or something like that, like cool. But I love Double Dash. I feel like it's one of the more unique entries, and I would love to be able to go back and play that, in the same way we can with 64 on the NSO app.
Yeah, it would be really cool. I don't think it's gonna happen though. I think they're putting everything into Mario Kart 8. Seems to be where
Yeah,
ever
but again,
and
it's just
everyone's
like
still buying it.
it's not the same though, right? Like, it's like, I don't need it to be like but it's again, this is why you want the GameCube app on NSO, is because then you can just put this stuff out, right? Because like, I can play Mario Kart 64 over there. I don't necessarily need to buy a boxed copy of Double Dash, but it would be nice to be able to go back and play that again if we want that hit of nostalgia, if we want to do a retrospective on that series or something, right? Like, it's frustrating to not have the option at all, right? And I feel
Yeah.
that way about Melee as well. Like, it's kind of insane with how popular Melee is in, like, the, like, online scene and the tournament scene, that there's not a single, like, that there's no way to play it except for having the original hardware and maintaining it. Like, that's just, it's like, come on, like, why can we not have a way for this to be more accessible?
I know, yeah, it's crazy really, isn't it? I mean, do you think that there is a possibility, I know we've kind of written it off, where they continue to do these HD remasters of some games, but then the smaller stuff, they're just like, "Yeah, we're not gonna do it," and then they just chuck it out and it's in 4 by 3 and it's, like, low resolution and
I would love that. I really would. I think that would be fine, but I don't know. I don't know. I know that that would rub some people the wrong way, I think, you know?
I think so too because it's like, "Well, why can't I just have Pikmin on here?" Like, I don't care about the HD, I just wanna play
Yeah.
Pikmin, can we pay $30 for it? It's like, why?
And I think if you want my answer of what they should do, is I think they should put a little more, like, effort into the remasters so that,
I
like,
mean, they did a lot of effort on Metroid, and I think if they
right.
put that level of effort into all of them, I'd be
Then
more than happy to pay.
and I think if you do it that way, where it's like, yeah, like, you can play the original version on NSO, but it's gonna be in 4.3, it's gonna be this, it's not gonna have these quality of life changes. But if you buy the remaster, it's a $40 game. It's, maybe it's a full price game if it's 2 games packaged or whatever, but it does have new autosave features. It is in widescreen. It is running at, ideally 60 frames per second, or, whatever, right? Like, it has those bells and whistles that make it feel like a new game again versus the original. But like, I think even when there is a good viable re-release of a game, I want the original to be playable because they're not going to be the same, even if it's a good remake, right? Like,
I mean, we saw that with the GTA remasters, right?
or,
They
or
took
like,
down the old versions and replaced it, and everyone revolted and was like, "Well, can I have my good version back, please? Because your remaster sucks."
right. Or like, I look at something like the Crash Bandicoot, the Insane trilogy, right? Where it's like, that was a really great remaster. It's a great product. It's was enjoyable.
But I
It's also
still wanna
different.
go back and play the one on the PlayStation, yeah.
The style's different, the lighting's different, the physics are a little bit different. Like, if you're a
Yeah.
purist,
Sounds high quality instead of, like, Ooga Boogas, like, really compressed.
and that's the thing though, right? Is like, those are products that are gonna speak to a different audience. For, like, new players who have never played Crash and have no nostalgia and they wanna maybe see what it's all about, yeah, the Insane trilogy is probably a great product. If you're somebody who just wants to go back and have that hit, but if you're, like, a Crash purist, or, like, you wanna have that, like, "Oh, I wanna go back and compare," whatever, right? Like, you should be able to have that experience. That should be an option for you, you know? And it would be easy, I think, to do that and to be like, yeah, this is a product that exists where you can play the base original version, But if you want, the again, right? It's like I think of like something like Fire Red and Leaf Green or like the Pokemon remakes where it's like those are games in their own right, right? Like they're not a
Yeah.
replacement for the original game. They're their own experience. And that's cool because you get something that's good for new players, that is good for players that want nostalgia, but something new. But like if I go and play Fire Red, that's not the same experience as playing Red. And that's a good thing. And I think like that you get to the point where then you have people who are nostalgic for the remake. That's awesome. Like then you're building on the
That's like
legacy
that
of it.
happens with all media though. That happens with like movies as well. People are like, "Oh, I like the remake of that movie better than the original." I'm like that with Miracle on 34th Street. I never watched the original. I watched the one with the kid that played Matilda because that's the one I grew up with.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and I think like that's like the strength of having a franchise that has history, but like you got to leverage the history, Like you should be able to have that experience where like you're the kid who that's the one you watch, but your parents watch that other one, and then you make them watch the one you like, they make you, and you have you create you have to let the art have a conversation with itself. Like I think that's what's cool about remakes is like how do you go back and take something new and recontextualize it in the modern era, but like that's never going to be the same as just the old one. And
Hmm.
like you want that. And again, when you get into like games with licensing and stuff like that, the soundtracks change, the stuff gets changed around, and like that's
Oh yeah, if they ever release the Tony Hawk's game on any of the GameCube ones, it's not having the same
no, or
music. It's
like
just not gonna
even if
happen.
it's a percentage of it, like because like with the Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 remake, they did get most of the original soundtrack and they added new songs. That's cool. There is still songs missing, and that's a bummer, right? And like
Yeah, it's why I can't play any of the Crazy Taxi
it's
re-releases.
not the same game
Always got
without
to
the
play the
offspring. It's
original.
just not.
Just
Like it's
no, it's
so
really not.
connected to it. You can't do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I looked through the list. There's still a bunch of games I'd love to see
I've
released.
got
I
6 more games on my list here.
Okay. You go with a couple then, and then I can because I'm sure some of mine are probably overlap.
Okay. All right. So, one of the ones that I would love to see is a series I'm not sure we've talked about. I don't really know if you have a relationship with it, but it's Custom Robo.
No, never.
I love Custom Robo. So it is I believe it's owned by Nintendo because they definitely publish it, but I'm not totally sure what
You
they're
never know though, because there's a
yeah.
bunch of games they publish that they don't own.
So I'm not totally. I, I, so let me see. It's developed by Noise, published by Nintendo. It looks like they own it, but it only has a few entries. Like it's not a big series. The original one was on N64, but it was Japan only. There was a second one that was Japan only, and then like actually there was a third one too on the Game Boy Advance. So this one was just called Custom Robo. It was the same name as the original, and this was the first one that came to North America, and there was like one on the DS after that that I never got into, but it's like a real like hidden gem, like I think it's like a cult classic on the GameCube where like every person I know who's ever played it loved it, but it's not a game that has a ton of fanfare. It didn't review super well at the time. I played it when I was young, so like I'm sure that impacted my bias towards it or whatever, but it's a game that like I remember really fondly and had like a very unique style and flair, and especially like among Nintendo franchises, right? Like being like a arena based like mech fighter is a really very different thing. And I would love to go back to it. I think it would be cool to see people maybe reevaluate it in the modern era because I think about when it came out and I wonder if part of the critical reaction was because it was very like cartoony and goofy and we were kind of leaning more towards like serious, gritty, grim, dark type narratives in games. So I don't know. I wonder how people would feel about it now.
I got some news for you here, Pete. It's on Switch Online. It exists. The first two were on N64, and you can play them if you download the N64 app from the Japanese eShop. You can play Custom
Ooh.
Robo and Custom Robo V2. They exist.
Okay. I've never played those ones because they were on N64.
Yeah, they never came out in
But
North
they
America, so you can go
they're in
play some
English.
Custom
They're in
Robo.
English though, right? Like I have to play them in
I have no
Japanese.
idea. You'll have to figure out. You'll have to see if you can figure that out. But they're playable. They're there.
I want to play the
Gives you
GameCube
some
one though.
hope, though, right? Like if it's
Yeah, you're
coming,
right.
if those are there, the hope is that they bring the future ones out as well. Like maybe they're reviving the franchise.
It would be cool. It would be cool. I would be excited about it. I would love to hear if anybody in the audience has any love for Custom Robo. Do we have any Custom Robo fans out there? Because I feel like it was pretty cool, but we'll see. I'm surprised. When I looked up the Metacritic score, I thought it would be higher than 65. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe this is a Sonic Adventure situation.
Yeah, it could be.
Could
Like
be.
I don't know. I
Famitsu
love
gave it a
Sonic
30 out
Adventure.
of 40, though. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good for Famitsu as well.
Yeah, like, they're pretty. See, I'm wondering if this was like a American bias against it.
It could well be because like they've been released. Like I said, they've been re-released in
See,
Japan on the eShops.
says this reception on the Wikipedia page. The game received mixed reviews according to Metacritic. In Japan, it got 2 7s and 2 8s for a total of 30 out of 40. However, in retrospective reception, the game has been heavily praised and is frequently featured in best GameCube game lists and countdowns. That could just be nostalgia talking as we age, but who's to say? Custom Robo, bring it to the Switch. Let's do it. You want to go? You got another one?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever played it, and this game slipped my mind. I'd completely forgot about it until we started assembling this list. And that's a game called Zoo Cube. Did you ever play Zoo Cube on the
I've never
GameCube?
played it, but I'm familiar with it because it's very rare, and I know, like, in the collector space, people are like, "Oh, yeah, like, Zoo Cube is one of those,"
Oh, is
like
it?
I think so, I think it's a pretty expensive game because there's not many copies of it.
Well, we had a copy of this. I'm sure we did because I remember it. This weird like floating cube, and like you put pieces on it. It's
Yeah.
very weird. It's a very cool game. I liked it. I like Zoo Cube. Be cool for that one to come back. I think this would make a good phone game as well. Just bring back Zoo Cube. I mean, Acclaim's gone. I don't know who owns this now. Who bought Acclaim? Someone bought them. Started re-releasing all their games because we ended up with a bunch of their games being re-released. God,
It
what's
it
the one with that horrible fog? That N64 game. Two Rock. We had Two Rock get re-released, which was an
Oh,
acclaimed game
right.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Huh. I don't know, it's interesting. The assets were sold off to multiple different people, so it's tough to say where this one ended up.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows who owns them? Which is a shame because a lot of these games they just get then tied up for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And who actually owns this game? And is it ever going to get re-released? And no, no, it won't.
Well, that's what the Steam Deck's for. Speaking of games that'll never get uh republished, this is the last third party game I had on my list, and it is Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2 was like a revolutionary game at the time, right? Like if you ask any Spider-Man game fan of like what are the best Spider-Man games, this is definitely one of them. And this is one of those really interesting games that was made before Activision became like the Call of Duty, like push out factory. And there was a time where they briefly had the Marvel license, and a couple of the studios that you now know for being like the Call of Duty studios made Marvel games. And this is one of them. This game's actually made by Treyarch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it's similar. I don't know if you've ever heard of the X-Men Origins Wolverine game, but that was made by Raven. And it's a
No.
terrible fucking movie, but a really good video game. And yeah, like this game was really good. Like I'm sure in retrospect, right? Like games like this, like that are from like an established IP that gets a lot of games, like it's tough because I'm sure you'd go back to it and there's a lot that would feel very antiquated and, versus like the modern Spider-Man games we have now, or even the stuff from like, a couple gens ago, like Web of Shadows and things like that. It's going to feel more dated, but I mean, at the time, this game absolutely slapped and it was certainly, you know, one that paved the way. That was the first time you ever had like open world swinging around the city and everything, you know? So, really
Mhm.
cool game, one that would absolutely never ever be on a service like this because not only is it an Activision game, it's also a licensed movie game tie-in thing. So, like, I can't imagine that one happening. But Stranger Things,
Yeah, I
right?
mean
You get
that
the SpongeBob games back and stuff. So who knows?
I mean, one of my favorite games of all time. It's lost to history, never gonna get remade, I don't think. Although it could do. Toy Story 2 on PlayStation 1. I could see that getting a remake
It's
made
on.
by
It's on the friggin' PlayStation streaming service, which is a wild thing to me.
yeah. Well, I mean, the company that made it, all of them still exist. It was made by Traveller's Tales, which got renamed TT Games, and now all they do is Lego games. Um,
Such a shame.
Activision
Like, shout out to the Lego
Activision
games, they're
published it.
good, but, like,
They're
Traveler's
really
Tales made
good,
some
yeah.
cool games back in the day.
And Activision published it, and it's Disney. I guess Disney's the issue, but they're back into making games these days, so why not?
So nuts. Hmm. Anyway, so sorry, I got distracted looking at the Traveler's Tales Wikipedia page because I'm like, damn, yeah. I remember that logo they had
But
before, like,
yeah,
with the, like, the
the guy over his shoulder,
and
like a
he
little
was like a
fox
raccoon
thing or
guy,
whatever
right?
it
Like,
is.
he, like, kinda looked like
Oh
Sly
yeah,
Cooper before
raccoon,
Sly
yeah.
Cooper.
Yeah, yeah.
He was like a raccoon or a fox or something, but, like,
Oh, loved it.
I would be remiss. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I did have one more third party game I'll mention, which is Soul Calibur 2. I love Soul Calibur in general. I think 2 is my favorite. It's like I think a one that a lot of people look back on as being like one of the better ones. And I feel like it would actually be the odd third party game that would actually make sense to bring back because obviously Bandai Namco and Nintendo have a pretty tight relationship now. And the GameCube version of this was the one that featured Link as like the special character. Um, this was like the one that started the trend of Soul Calibur having like weird guest fighters in every game. But this was the coolest one because in 2, the fighter you had was based on what platform you bought the game on. So on PS2, it was Hihachi from Tekken. On GameCube, it was Link. And then on Xbox, it was Spawn, the comic book character. And very strange, but
Xbox didn't have anything like, you couldn't get Master Chief there, or was he not
I
really
guess
like a
not.
figure at that point?
I mean, Spawn was very cool, at that point. He was kinda having a moment,
Yeah, but it's
but
not like known as like an Xbox guy
no,
though, is
no
he?
relation to Xbox. Very weird, but hey, whatever, right? Like, sure, it's cool. It's kinda thing that
Yeah.
wouldn't happen today, right? But, I think this game is really good. I think it would age well, and I think obviously, the inclusion of Link is just a really cool thing, and opening that up to, like, a new generation of fighting game players, I think would be neat.
I've got a few third party titles. Obviously, we need the Mary Kate and Ashley game from Acclaim. No, I'm joking.
Obviously, yeah.
Um, Code
You and these
Veronica,
Acclaim
Resident
games, you were
Evil.
real into the Acclaim games back then, huh?
Yeah, obviously. No, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Ideally, just remake this game after Resident Evil 4. I'm happy for you to loop back and finish off the Claire Redfield storyline. Be absolutely fine for me to do if you did that. I think that would be great. I'd love to see that come over. I actually really loved this game. I remember playing it on the Dreamcast and then later on the PS2, and it got a port to GameCube as well.
And then it came to
One
PS3 and
game,
360 later,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It came to 360 and PS3 later as well. It's like a HD remaster. Um, One game that I feel like is probably missing from both of our gaming histories, and maybe would explain some of the other games by Suda, is Killer 7. I've never played it. I've
Mm.
always wanted to. I feel like it would make sense on Switch considering Suda's kind of relationship and releasing some of his other games there, and releasing like, I think they're exclusive, right? No More Heroes. Or is it
Yeah,
No More
yeah.
Heroes 3? Is that
They're all Nintendo
exclusive? Yeah.
exclusive, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, so it would make sense to bring over Killer 7. I think that would make a lot of sense to bring over. We've already mentioned Crazy Taxi. I feel like that game should be released on every platform and do it as a pack-in. I'm happy if you need to bring Crazy Taxi 2 with it. I won't play it, but I'll still buy it. Um, and one game I remember, this was my GoldenEye. I played it constantly with my brother. We would do split screen, and it's 007 Nightfire. I loved that
Okay.
game.
Yeah. I've never played it, but
I'd love to see that come.
I remember the box for some reason. I don't know if I had a friend that had
Yeah,
it or
yeah.
something.
Good old Pierce again.
Yeah. I think I might have played it, like, at a time or but it did not have the, allure of GoldenEye.
Yeah, but those are all my, third party ones. There's a lot of other third party games on there, like, I'd love to bring, like, Splinter Cell over and stuff. I'd love to see that
Mm.
franchise revived. There's, like, a ton of stuff.
I got 3 more. One of them is one it's an interesting one for me because I'm picking it for a few reasons. One is Sierra's not here, so I'd be remiss to not mention it. But Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness is a game that I know she is a big fan of. And it's one of the odd games where it's a Pokemon game, right? And it's like a RPG. It's not a mainline entry or anything, but I've never played it. Um, I
Oh,
never
okay.
I never played there's one other game I think similar to this that I Colosseum was the one that was stadium style, but I think there was another one like this. No, okay, it is a successor to Colosseum. So maybe that had a story as well.
What, Gale of Darkness? Yeah, apparently you used assets from Colosseum.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Made by
Yeah,
the
no,
same
no. Okay,
company.
okay, okay. Because I think Colosseum I only played the multiplayer of. I don't if it but well, either way. These games have story. They have like a unique storyline where like you can capture other people's Pokemon and there's like these dark Pokemon and you need to cleanse the darkness from them and Dark Lugia as a whole. Like there's a bunch of weird it was made by this developer Genius Sonority. They're like it's like the only RPG Pokemon game that wasn't made by Game Freak up until Let's Go with like creatures and stuff. So like it's really weird. It's a weird game. It's weird that it ever got made. And like I
Yeah.
think yeah, this was their Coliseum and Gale of Darkness were their first 2 games. Um and yeah, like they're all folks that like had worked on like Dragon Quest and it's just like it's a weird game that ever got made and it's like one that they've kind of swept under the rug, I think, because it's so different than everything else in the Pokemon series. And you'd think it would have been a bigger deal, but I guess it kind of came out at that point where Pokemon was like at its biggest lull as like the original. And this is why I didn't play it at the time, right? Was like I was at that age where I had gotten picked on for like continuing to like Pokemon. So I kind of distanced myself from it, right? So like it,
I mean, it
I,
also came out on the GameCube. Like, I do think
which was
if
not
it would had
that
come,
popular.
yeah, if it had come out like 2 years prior on the N64, then maybe more people would have bought it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just interesting. It's an interesting game in history in general, and I think it would be really cool to see it come back and to again have it kind of reevaluated in the modern era by like a wider audience because it is so strange.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm not gonna play it. It's Pokemon. I just,
Yeah, not your thing.
but
I get it.
yeah, yeah.
Similarly, on that note, I'll throw another one out there, which I know this would be on Chewy's list, and that's Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. This is the again, I think this is the first. I think this is the first home console Fire
No,
Emblem
didn't wasn't the Fire Emblem
in
came
the
out on the
modern era.
NES? I
Yeah,
was gonna
because
say, yeah, like,
the original was I think on the NES, and then I think there's another one on Super Nintendo prior to that,
oh, but there
then
was
we
a
get into
thing
the
on
Game Boy Advance
N64?
era.
Yeah,
No,
nothing on
nothing
N64.
on N64, and then we had this. But the reason that this game is like historically significant, I would say probably to most people, like if you haven't already played it, is that this is the game that stars Ike, and Ike has been a playable character in Smash Brothers for several years now. So I think even if you don't play Fire Emblem, you know who Ike is, right? Like he's iconic in that way. So I think again, right, like Fire Emblem is such a bigger franchise now, and they've been in the habit of like re-releasing old games, right? Like they just put the GBA Fire Emblem up on NSO. They had that one that had never come to the States that was like a limited product for a little while, a couple years back. So like it seems like they're down to leverage some of the older games and like expose the new players to some of the classics. And this feels like a natural one given that Ike has that visibility. So this I think this would be a cool game to either get like a proper remake of or just to re-release.
Yeah, I could see them doing like an anniversary release like they did with the NES stuff.
And they did that on yeah, on 3DS. They remade I want to say Fire Emblem 2. I'm
Mm,
fuzzy, right? Like I'm a new fan, so don't hold me to any of that. But there was a set of remake games that I want to say came out after Awakening. It was like the last ones that came out on 3DS, and I think they were remakes of 2. So yeah, it's not like it's something they don't do. It's just it hasn't happened yet.
another pseudo almost first party title that I think would be really cool is Star Fox Adventures, and I wonder
Oh, I didn't even
how they
think
go
about
about
that.
doing that.
Yes, you're so right. Because again, that's a game I didn't really like give a proper try because of what it wasn't. And like, I think I might like it because it's a Zelda game. Like,
Yeah, and I don't know how they go about doing that. I imagine they can just take it and remake it and publish it because it's Nintendo's it's Nintendo's character in the same way that they were able to do what they wanted with the Donkey Kong stuff, right?
yeah, yeah, just because Rare made it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Whereas Banjo was different in that regard.
Right, because they didn't own that.
Mhm.
Although I guess because they published it, I guess.
Yeah,
But I guess
they it's strange. Very it's a very hard breakup, and Nintendo should have just bought them. It's ridiculous that they didn't. It still
I
is
gotta
to this day.
so I've been thinking about doing like a little like video essay series of like what I think were like major publishers like biggest mistakes, right? Like in their history. That would be on my list. If I was making I don't know if it's top 3 worthy, but it's top 5 worthy, I think for sure.
Honestly, that is right up there. The company that developed the Super FX chip that enabled you to, like, have 3D graphics on an SNES that were on the bleeding edge, that were making some of the most beloved games on your systems that you
On 2 in
trusted
a
to
row.
use. Yeah, and that you trusted to use your IP, which was very, very rare for them to do, and yet you just let them slip into a competitor's hands. Like, why?
Nice pun by the way. It's very rare.
You got any other first party ones? I got one more.
I have one last game. Yeah, I wonder if it's the same
Okay.
game. But I just want to say because I figured out what it was. The game I was thinking of was Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia, which was a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, which was the second Fire Emblem game. So I was correct. Look at that. I didn't start that to like pat myself on the back. I just wanted to like clarify the facts. Then I was like, oh, I got them all right. Look at me. All right, good job.
Right, I'll get you a medal for that one.
Please, please. I like trophies. So yeah, my last game is Animal Crossing.
Oh, okay, yeah, mine's not that.
Okay, all right. So I think we talked about it earlier, right? Where it's like I think it kind of makes sense for Nintendo to not be in the business of re-releasing old Animal Crossing games, right? Because it feels like kind of similar to like the Mario Kart thing, where it's like you don't want to cannibalize sales or whatever. But like the original Animal Crossing is such a special game, and it has such a different style and attitude than the modern games, like where the villagers are like some of them are really jerks and like they're very sassy. The dialogue is a lot more like unique, I think, and it feels less packaged than a lot of the stuff that you get in the modern games. And
You
like
think
what
they keep that? I don't think they do. I think the problem you've got is if they re-release it, I think it's gonna be a remake, and maybe it's based in the same town. You have the train, and you bring back some of the characters that are missing, like Blanca. But I think the characters' personalities match the modern personalities.
that's the thing is I wouldn't want a remake. Like I just want them to just
Oh,
port
shove
it.
on the ROM. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't want them to go back and touch it. Or like if they are gonna touch it, like it would have to be a we're leaving the dialogue alone thing. Otherwise it's
Yeah, I'd be
pointless.
fine with that. Yeah. And make sure you keep the games I can play in game there, please, as well.
Yeah, right. And again, right, it's like I think those are things that they would remove if it was a remake. So it's like I kind of just want to port, but like it would be cool to get the exact same game, but like we touched it up a little bit and like maybe make some changes to the gameplay because you do kind of have that like situation where like you run out of stuff to do and it would be nice if there was like maybe more to some of that stuff, but it's also like that's what the game was and like I kind of just want that, you know?
Yeah. So my final game is Zelda Four Swords Adventure. I've never had a chance to play
Oh,
it.
cool.
It's ridiculously expensive to play and really hard if you want to play it with actual hardware, 'cause you need 4 Game Boy Advances with 4
You can
link
play it on a
cables.
3DS.
Yeah, I don't have one of those either. But I'd love to be able to just download Four Swords and, like, multiple people can either connect up a phone because 'cause they're willing to do that now, and I can see it on the screen the stuff on the screen, right? Because like, we just had that functionality with, Everybody One Two Switch. Or I connect up another Switch, which I think, there's tons of them around, or I can play online, which would be really great. In the same way that, Crystal Chronicles was meant to be that, but didn't turn out to be great. I think Four Swords Adventure would be really cool, and I'd like to play it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they've already ported it to like modern hardware, so like I feel like you could do that. They already have the like online functionality figured out and everything, so feels like just another one. Like, why wouldn't you?
Because Nintendo, that's why. Because they just like leaving money on the table, apparently.
I'll never understand it. I really
When
won't.
you genuinely, like, and ethically, I'll never invest in Nintendo while I talk about them. But I would love to just be an investor in Nintendo, like have millions and millions and millions, so I could just phone them up and be like, "Yeah, what's the deal with Wind Waker? Are you ever going to release that game or what?" Like on an investor call. Like I just genuinely, I would just be like, "Are you just leaving money on the table for no reason or
It's
what? What's the deal
weird.
there?"
It's really weird because like I don't know. As a pundit, right? Like, I always try to keep in mind the fact that like we don't know anything, right? Like we know as much as we can research, as much as we can, learn from just being students of the industry, right? But like I don't know how to run a multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar corporation. I'm not going to sit here and purport to know more than the folks that run Nintendo. However, Nintendo is the company that I most am like, if I could just have the reins for a few days, right? Like if I could just make decisions for I feel like there's so many things like that where it's like, But why? Like, why did you do it this way? Why is this not an option? Why is this not available?" Like, I just feel like you could pad out every single year on Nintendo Switch with like several re-releases of old games. And that would sell like a million copies, right? And like maybe not be bestsellers on the console, but like how much effort are you putting into the re-release of Pikmin 1 and 2, right? Like, how have you not released Wind Waker yet when you have it? It's done. Just put it out. I don't get it. We had how many years on the Switch where there was no Zelda release and you could have just been
And then
like,
and then and then
"Yeah,
everyone's
here's a
like, "Oh, we're
here's a
finally getting a port." And then it's fucking Skyward Sword.
arguably the least popular of the 3 games that we're
And,
talking
and
about,
like I
and it was
get
the
it,
only
right?
one that didn't already have a re-release. So, like, they had to make that when it's like, you
Yeah.
have Wind Waker and
And figure
Twilight
out like
Princess.
the motion stuff, like mapping that and like figuring out a solution for it so people can actually play it. Like, that was a difficult port. But it's so ugly. I just want to play Wind Waker. I want to run around and catch that pirate girl, Petra, I think her name is,
Yeah, Petra.
and just like have a good time. I like Wind Waker. It's cute. It's
It is.
adorable. It's one of my
Great.
favorites.
I
I want
agree.
to play that sploosh game and lose. I always lose the battleship game. You can go play in the bar, and when
Okay.
you like fire, it goes sploosh when it
Yeah, no,
hits
you
the
got
water.
me.
It's great.
I got there
Yeah.
because you said sploosh game, and like my mind went back to the GameCube thing, and I was like, "What the fuck? Like, what game is this that I'm not conjuring?" You're like, "Yeah, the sploosh game with the noise," and I'm like, "Yes, no, I don't know."
Yes, that one. I know what you're
That
talking
sounds
about.
that sounds right to me, right? All right. So here's the thing, Steve. We had another segment planned, but we went long on our GameCube love thing. So we're gonna jump into the plugs here, and then I'm gonna need you to pick a question from the question block that we're gonna end it on. How's that sound?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right, you got it. Okay, you got it. All right. So before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of July. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to write in and let us know what GameCube games you want to see come to Nintendo Switch, or you want to write in for next week's show, where we're going to talk about the rest of the games that Nintendo has planned to come out this year. We're going to rank them by our hype for those games. We're going to do some Metacritic predictions. We're going to answer the question, could this go down as the best year on Nintendo Switch? A lot of questions to answer for next week. So if you want to write in with your thoughts.
It depends if Mario Wonder is any good. Well, and I think it probably will be. And I'm very excited for Mario RPG. Oh my god, this year's bananas.
Bananas. We're definitely gonna have a whole episode arguing if this is the best year in video games at the end of the year or at the beginning of next year. We'll see how that goes timeline wise, but it's gonna happen for sure. But if you want to write in with your thoughts on those topics for next week, please make sure you do. Head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website, and you can find all the ways you can get in touch. You can write into us questions at flipscreen.games. If email's your thing, you can come join our Discord where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes. And, however you choose to get in, if you're on YouTube, go comment on the video. However you choose to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you before next week's show. And then, of course, while you're there, go click on some stuff. Go check out our sister shows. You want to go become a patron, get your name read on the air, just like everybody did earlier, get the show early, all kinds of good perks and goodies. And of course, it helps us keep these mics hot and the lights on. However you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. Steve, what question are we going to end it on?
I like the question from Left Eye Lazy.
Okay.
Who said, I just watched a TikTok that said Tears of the Kingdom is directly tied to Ocarina of Time. And man, this timeline is nuts. Do you guys give a shit about the Legend of Zelda timeline? Does it matter in your enjoyment of the game?
Yes and no. If that makes sense.
For me, it's no and no. I genuinely don't care.
So, and when I say that I care, I just mean I think it's interesting, right? Like particularly when I was younger, right? Like, when I first learned about the Zelda timeline and like before the Hyrule Historia came out, which I have upstairs on my bookshelf, so obviously I'm reading about the timeline. There was a website, a fan website, I think it was called Zelda Universe, that I used to go on, and they had a page on the site that was all about the timeline, and it explained like, this is the timeline. It has these 3 branches. These are the important games in the timeline, and then this is where every other game sits on the timeline base. And here's the evidence that places it here, and kind of going through that whole thing. And I was like fascinated by that. That was one of the first instances of me finding like fan content online that was about like exploring lore and kind of, because like I've always been interested in that sort of thing, but prior to discovering like fan conversation online and stuff like that, I was pretty limited to like what you could buy and read from official sources, right? Like stuff in the book of the game, or like in rare examples, like not usually in games, but like I remember I had like the Marvel encyclopedia that my friend had, and I was able to read about a bunch of stuff like that. So like in a pre-Wikipedia era, that kind of stuff, right? Like I was eating that shit up, for sure. And like to this day, I find it interesting. I think like the timeline is cool, and it's neat to see like how they play with it in different ways, and how like Breath of the Wild kind of like is a reboot where it kind of threw out the timelines and it brings in stuff from every timeline and stuff that's contradictory and stuff that like really couldn't coexist. But it's like, it doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately, what's cool about Zelda is like the rich tapestry of lore, and this idea that like, because it is about reincarnation and alternate universes and all this stuff, that like it all fits together, and it doesn't like your personal headcanon is like more important than what is officially on any piece of paper, right? But it is cool that there's that thought put into it, and that like if you're the type of person that wants to go and dig out those little, you know, bits of lore and have those cool moments of like, oh, this is referencing that, or this is, like that's really neat. Like, I think it's cool if you want to engage with that stuff. But if not, I think it's very neat how Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have kind of taken all that stuff and boiled it down and be like, whether you get it or quote unquote get it or not, it doesn't matter because it's
I
it's
don't get it.
all
I never get any of it. I remember talking about it at the beginning, and I think it was Andrew Valentine that like corrected me on a bunch of things and was like, "Oh, that's this, that's that," and I'm just like, I had no idea, and I don't know. I still don't really understand much of it, but I think it's so cool, and I love that you can approach the game from either a complete place of ignorance like me, where I don't know any of that stuff, and I'm still having a wonderful time with it, or from a place where you're deeply ingrained in it and you know the timeline at the back of your hand and you really appreciate every single little aspect. And I think they do such a good job of catering for both people. But yeah, the timeline doesn't do very much for me, although I did very much enjoy years and years and years ago, Brian David Gilbert's video that he did for Polygon solving the Zelda timeline in 15 minutes. And he put everything up on the board and like he had
God.
like the fucking string. I
I,
loved that video. It was so fun.
I'll tell
It's
you
well
what.
worth a watch.
I still, and this is like a bit of a tangent. I still really love Brian David Gilbert stuff. I still follow him. I think he's a brilliant comedian. But like, man, do I miss Unraveled sometimes. Like that show he was
Really
firing on
good.
all fucking cylinders on those early episodes, man. Like some of those are just brilliant. Like the one where he reads all the Halo books and it's like, and I became the Master Chief of Loneliness is just exceptional television, man. Um, but yeah, I'll say this though, Matt. I guess to more specifically answer your question, like the Ocarina tie-in, that did influence my initial enjoyment of the game because in the opening, hour or so of the game, and I won't spoil what if you haven't got in there yet for yourself. Um, but there's like a very obvious connection, right? This isn't even a spoiler. There's the Temple of Time, right? In the very beginning. And it's like, I don't, if you're the most casual passing knowledge of Ocarina of Time, you probably are aware of the Temple of Time, right? So like that it gets your
Even I know the Temple of Time, and I've not
exactly.
even finished that game.
It gets your detectors going off, right? You're like, oh, so does that mean this? Like, could that mean this? Does that tie, and like, I like that aspect of leveraging lore in a new thing, right? Is like, I think, like Steve said, is the best case scenario is it works for anybody, right? Like, every game should, in the same way that like old comics used to work, right? Like, everyone should be able to be your first one when it comes to Zelda. Um, but having that nod where like if you are somebody who, has that legacy with the franchise, you can have those little moments where you're like, "Oh, like does this have significance?" And you can start cooking and having your little fan theories and everything and whether they come to fruition or not. To me, that's half the fun of a game that is like experiential and exploration based when it comes to the lore is like you thinking you know what's happening and then it's like, "Oh no, actually we have these other layers you hadn't considered or whatever." Like that subversion of your expectation is always so fun. And I mean, that's
You
what
know
Zelda's
what?
all
And
about, right? Is the
I think
aha
I
moment.
love that. I think I love that in remakes as well, you know, where it's just like, I know what's coming next. I know what it's going to be. And they take the moment to change it so you have no idea. Even like something like in Resident Evil, where it's like, there's a zombie in that locker, and you go to open it thinking there's going to be one in there, and there's
It's
nothing there.
like
And
nothing
it
there,
like
like something
fucks you
falls
from
out,
behind.
right? Or
Yeah.
then you're like, oh
Yeah.
no. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right, we got you.
Yeah, it just messes you. I love that
Yeah.
in remakes. I love that they can mess around with what fans expect and come to expect. But it's just like, actually, no, we've changed it. We're tweaking it. We're, playing around with the timeline a little bit more. And I like that it's completely fluid in Zelda. Nothing else is like it. The timeline is just, it is insanity. Absolute insanity.
Yeah. And I think before Hyrule Historia, there was a real sense of like mythos around it where it was like, oh, like this is like what the fans have come up with or whatever, right? And we're pretty sure it's right, but it's like somewhere in Shigeru Miyamoto's office, there's like a piece of paper with the timeline like crumpled up in a ball, shoved in a corner or whatever. And like that was like the mythos of it was like it exists, we just don't know, and then like they confirm things. They've also made some changes and stuff like that. So it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the perfect example of like how to do deep expanded lore right. Because if you're a huge dork and you want to read every entry and you want to be that type of person, it's there for you. And if that's not important to you at all, it's totally unobtrusive. And it is still good set dressing. It still creates a good world that feels lived in and feels like it has history, but you don't need to explore it to like prove that to you. You're like, okay, cool, it's there. That's neat.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You know what I
I
mean?
need to go and listen to your Final Fantasy 16 episode from last week, and if you haven't listened to it and you're interested in Final Fantasy 16, listen to the Flip Screen Games podcast, because I know there's that, like, fast action lore or whatever it's
Oh,
called,
it's
where you press the
so
button.
good, Steve. It's like the
So, like,
best. It's the
it's
best
like,
lore system ever.
yeah, so and I feel like that's the kind of stuff that I would love, like, more of a glossary in
Dude,
Zelda, where I'm like, "Who's this guy?" And I'm gonna press the button, and I'm gonna read the history, and it's like, "Oh, here he is, and this is what he did, and this is where we are in the timeline." That would be so cool for Zelda.
I promise you I'm gonna keep it short when we record Flip Screen Games tomorrow, but I want to talk a little bit more about Final Fantasy because I'm way further in now and I've updated some of my takes. I was already high on it last week, but I like it a lot more, even more now. Um,
Yeah.
and there's an evolution of that system that is so dope that comes around in kind of like the third act of the game, where it not only has like the lore archive or whatever that you can look at, there's this system that is a web, right, where it's like the center is your character and then it has like all the factions and everything, and it has lines between every character explaining like what their relationship is, but you
Oh,
can
just
but
like
you can
BDG's board on Unraveled.
yeah, but like you can go through the timeline and it literally shows you in real time of the game of like in this chapter, like these two characters were strangers, right?
See,
And
wouldn't that
then
be
this
great in, like,
character
even Tears of
saves
the
this
Kingdom?
character. And
Yeah.
then now in the next chapter, now they're allies. Then after he saved his life, now they're friends, right? And it's just like keeps evolving like that. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. No, I'm interested to hear about it. We'll talk about that tomorrow, so if you wanna hear more Final Fantasy talk, this week's Flip Screen Games podcast,
Tune in.
along with, and I promise this time, because I can't remember who it was, but someone on the Discord was very upset that we didn't touch on
I think it
last
was
week,
Armo. Yeah. That we have
didn't
to talk
touch
about
on
the
the
Xbox stuff.
FTC stuff. We will be talking about that this week, I promise you, Armo.
You got to talk about Diablo at some point too. You haven't been on the shows, and
I spoke a little bit about Diablo on Steam Deck podcast last
okay.
week, because I was talking about what games I played while I was away on holiday. But I do want to talk about Diablo at length at some point. But I want to play it with you. I want to hear your
I know. I want
opinion
to.
on
Yeah,
Diablo as well.
we got to get it figured out. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. And hey, guess what, everybody? I know we still have questions. I told you we'd get to them this week. Guess what? It was a big week, so we still have them. So we'll read them next week. Keep it tuned. And don't forget,
Mhm.
write in with your thoughts about the question of could 2023 be the best year in the history of Nintendo Switch, because I think it's making a pretty strong case for itself. But we're going to talk all about that and much more next week on Nintendo Noise. So remember, you want to write in, you want to be involved, you want to show your support. Flipscreen.games, that's the website. And of course, you'll find links to all the places we are all over the web. You'll find our sister shows, you'll find our Patreon, you'll find our Discord, you'll find our email address. However you choose to get involved or show your support, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.